All right, I know I just made a video on the Celtics a couple days ago, but I'm like legitimately worried. Like, what is going on in Boston? This is what? You just lost by 13 to one of the worst teams in basketball. Look, I get the Raptors are pretty healthy now. They didn't have Emmanuel quickly tonight, but they do have Scotty Barnes back. RJ Barrett had a really good game. Nice, well-rounded performance across the board from the Raptors tonight. But dude, this is a terrible loss. Again, fully healthy Celtics, just like their loss to the Kings last week. Kings didn't have De'Aaron Fox in that one. Celtics get blown out. Celtics have everybody. Raptors don't have their point guard, Emmanuel quickly, and they lose to a 10-win team, one of the worst teams in basketball. I mean, you look at these numbers, like Derek White had an off night, sure, but Jason Tatum, 5 of 15, 3 of 9 from 3. He started the season amazing. Recently has not been quite as good. Porzingis was awesome tonight with 18 points, but he was a minus 17, and for the season has struggled. We'll get to his struggles later. Not to mention he struggled to stay on the court. That's another whole issue. Drew Holiday hasn't been quite as good this year as he was last year, especially shooting the three ball. That continued tonight. Jaylen Brown has really struggled this year across the board, 4 of 16 as well. Now, struggled by Jaylen Brown standards. He's still an all-star, but he hasn't been the same player he was last year either. Horford, look, I like Al Horford. The dude's like 38 years old. Eventually he's going to stop being one of the best playoff performers in all of basketball. Maybe it won't be this year, but it can't be this year. If it is this year, they're in serious trouble. Peyton Pritchard was awesome as per normal. He's been a huge piece for this team this season, but honestly, a 39%, well, about 40%, but 35% from three performance, just not hyper efficient, giving up 50, almost 51% from the field to the Raptors tonight as well. I mean, just like, this is not a good loss at all. They get out rebounded by 11 to Toronto. Shout out Jakob Poeltl, shout out Chris Boucher putting in work off the bench, but I'm rattled, man. I am rattled. And here's the problem, at the end of the day, I go on social media. The only thing I saw about this Celtics game on my Twitter feed was Jason Tatum posterizing Chris Boucher, which shout out to him. That's the coverage. This team is covered as if they're just gonna waltz their way to the finals, just like they did last year. That's not gonna happen. The NBA is better this season than it was last year. There are multiple teams in the Thunder, in the Cavs, that just look to be clearly better than everybody else right now, and that includes Boston. Like, it absolutely does. And I'm starting to truly get concerned about this team because, look, let's look at the schedule recently. It has not been, it hasn't been good. I mean, just honestly, it just has not been. You look at their last, what is it right here? Since basically the Chicago game, lost to Chicago, they're 1-1, 1-3, 2-3, 2-4, 5-4, 5-5, 6-5, 6-6, 7-6, 7-7 in their last 14 games. This is not what you expect from a championship contending team, especially a team that has been pretty healthy. Like, they haven't been missing as many players recently. And so, yeah, this is a relative term when I say that I'm kind of worried and almost starting to panic with the Celtics, because it's a different level of panic compared to any other team in the NBA besides maybe one or two others. You're not panicking that they're not going to be a playoff team or that they're going to lose in the first round even. You're panicking that they're not going to make the finals. And like, I get that's a much higher bar than almost any other NBA team has, and I think fairly so. But when you're the defending champions and you won the championship so dominantly last year to the point where there are legitimate discussions about if that was like one of the 5 or so best teams in NBA history, and that's a serious argument that can be made. And then this season, I mean, they're 7th in offensive rating for the season. They're third in offensive rating, 7th in defensive rating for the season, and their net rating is 3rd best in basketball. They've been awesome, but the last 14 games have not. They're 7th in defensive rating, but offensive rating at 6th. Somehow, I don't understand how they still have the 4th best net rating in basketball in their last 14 games, despite being 7-7. So give them credit for that. That math doesn't math, and I don't honestly totally understand how that works. Maybe those underlying metrics are a good sign, but how does that even? I guess because they've won by some blowouts. Blowout Indiana, blowout Toronto by a bajillion. I guess that's what it is. It's the blowout wins more than anything else. But it does put you in a spot where at this point, they're only 2 games up on the 3 seed, which is the Knicks. That would be a unfortunate series for the Celtics if they had to go into New York in the second round and play on the road with the Knicks having home court advantage in MSG. That would be tough. That's not going to be an easy series. And the Cleveland Cavaliers are just walking away from them. Like, it's really getting to the point where it's not all that competitive at this point for the 1 seed in the East. And you're going to have to realistically go into Cleveland and beat them on the road. You're going to have to go into New York potentially and beat them on the road if things don't get better soon. Like these are, and the thing is, some of these losses are bad losses. Like you're losing to the Kings without De'Aaron Fox. You're losing to the Bulls. You're losing to the, I guess the Philly played great on Christmas. That was not really a terrible loss, I guess, but you lose to Toronto tonight. Like some of these losses are rough losses against teams you should be beating. And it's just, again, it's a relative concern because they're so good as a team. But one of the things that I got to say I'm really concerned about is this season, 48.5 3-pointers attempted to only 42s attempted, which by far worst in the lowest in the league by over 5.5 twos a game. And they shoot over about 5 more threes per game than the second most shot by the Bulls, which makes sense, right? But the thing is, their 3-point percentage, number one, is just bang average. I mean, they are not an elite level shooting team as a whole this season, which is concerning in its own right, and I think can be attributed to guys like Porzingis not shooting quite so well this year. That'll probably go up. But Jrue Holiday as a whole has not shot the ball nearly as well this year as he did last year. He's getting older. That's not a huge stunner. Some regression was probably due. Derek White's still been really good, but Jason Tatum, he's right around that career average. Like, I don't expect this to change much. I don't think he's been unlucky exactly as much as he's just not a truly elite 3-point shooter. He's a very good player and a very good shooter. But again, you don't expect him to shoot 40% from three. Jaylen Brown, 32% from three on 6.5 attempts a game this year. That's not a good sign. Peyton Pritchard's been awesome. Al Horford continues to play at a high level, albeit on smaller volume than ever, but still playing his role. Hauser's a good shooter, but I just got to say, I'm concerned when guys like Jrue Holiday, KP, and Jaylen Brown are shooting as questionably as they are this year, especially Jaylen Brown, your second star who's shooting 32%. That's not a good sign at all. And the biggest thing is, when you compare to last season, number one, they were the second best 3-point shooting team in the league in terms of percentage, 2.5 percentage points better than they are this year. So that's a concern in its own right, considering we're halfway through the season and they're 2.5 percentage points worse, significantly worse percentage wise, but they're also shooting 6 more threes a game this year than they did last year. And look, I get that's the style of play they have, but they were also the second best 2-point field goal percentage team last season. This season, they're I believe they're third best, I guess, at 57%. But just like last season, they shoot the least in the league. Thing is, last season, they shot 47. This season, they're shooting 40. This is really concerning to me. I'm not saying they need to be shooting. I'm totally fine with them shooting the least twos in the league and the most threes in the league. But the disparity of how far they are in that extreme this season, especially considering the fact that they're shooting the 3-ball significantly worse than they did last year, is really concerning. They're super reliant on that 3-ball, and that's the type of thing that could be an absolute killer in the playoffs with the struggles this team has had so far this season. And one other thing that I have to say I'm concerned about as well. I know it's a pretty small sample size, but Kristaps Porzingis so far this season, he was a net positive for this team last season. Even with Horford playing great, he was a big part of their success, especially on the defensive end of the court when they were 2.5, almost 3 points better per 100 possessions with him on the court. This season, they're 9 points worse on the offensive end of the court per 100 possessions when he's on the court, and almost, 2.5 points worse on defense this season. That's really concerning because he's the unicorn. He's the guy that makes everything really, really impossible to stop. And look, they pretty much won the title without him last year. That's how good of a team they were. But the fact of the matter is, the fact that he has not been the same player this year in a league where they have more competition than ever is really concerning. The East is better than I expected it would be this year. The Celtics are worse than I expected that they would be this year. I honestly kind of thought that it might not be a cakewalk, but I thought they'd kind of waltz to the finals again this year in all likelihood. That does not look like it's going to happen. And I'm not going to lie, I'm concerned that they might fall to the 3 seed and put themselves in a really tough spot. Like, this could be a second round exit team. I would not be shocked by that anymore. You told me that a month ago, I would have been like, absolutely no chance. I'm starting to get concerned about the Celtics, and it's a different type of concern, like I said, so don't go overreacting my comments that I'm bashing them for no reason. They're an incredible team, but the plan, the standard for this team is to repeat, and I don't think that's going to happen, at least right now. So I hope y'all did enjoy the video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe. I'll be back with more NBA content very, very soon, and I appreciate y'all. Peace.